The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Any initiative to build back better for the post-COVID era will mean big spending. Tonight, we'll hear from the Federal Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, Catherine McKenna, on Ottawa's recent multi-billion-dollar spending plan for transit. Then, our Ontario Hubs check in on healthcare delivery in remote parts of Northern Ontario. And from coping with tough times in life to why exporting democracy is no longer a top Western foreign policy goal, we've got the Agenda's Week in Review. I'm Nam Kiwanuka. It's Friday, February 19th, and that's next on the agenda. This month, the federal government pledged $14.9 billion over 8 years in permanent transit funding. With us now for what the vision is and how much of that Ontario can expect to see, in the nation's capital, Catherine McKenna, Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, and the Liberal Member of Parliament for Ottawa Centre. Welcome. Hi.
Hi, it's great to be with you virtually.
Virtually, yes. Thanks so much for joining us. So a huge announcement. And before we begin our conversation, I just wanted to go over some of the numbers. So Sheldon, if you could please bring up the board. So last week, the Liberal government announced their plan to spend $14.9 billion over the next 8 years on public transportation projects across the country. That includes an immediate $5.9 billion to be spent on a project-by-project basis, and the creation of a permanent public transit fund of $3 billion per year, beginning in 2026-2027. Minister, you've made almost $6 billion available now. How will that money be allocated?
Well, so we're building on what's already working. So we've been making investments in public transit across the country, which is making a really big difference, whether it's electric buses in Toronto or Brampton or in Guelph. There are major projects that are being looked at, in particular in Toronto, Hamilton LRT. It's really, like, we talk about building back better. And as we invest in restarting our economy, because we're in a health crisis, but also an economic crisis, we need to really think about where do we want to be in the future. And I think for a lot of people, climate change is a really important issue, but so is congestion. People are often, stuck in traffic. And so we need better public transit. And that is also good for taking action on climate change, because a lot of emissions come from the transportation sector. So I think this is a huge opportunity. It's something that's very tangible in people's lives. It's getting home from work faster, home from school. We all know essential workers rely on public transit often to get to work. So a really important part of the vision for the future of the country. And as you spend dollars, I've always said, I'm a mom. You need to get multiple benefits of every taxpayer dollar we spend. So this is an example of jobs and growing our economy at a time when we really need that. It's also about climate change and reducing our emissions and cleaner air. And then it's about more inclusive communities, because if you think about who relies on public transit, it is often people who have no other options. But of course, it's moms, it's seniors, it's families, it's young people. So it's an investment in our future as well.
Well, how are you going to decide who gets what? What project gets the money?
Well, so we are lucky in the sense that there are some provinces that have been really ambitious in terms of what they're looking for in terms of public transit. Ontario is one of those provinces, British Columbia, Quebec. And so there are some projects there that we think are good projects. Of course, we need to see details of projects. We do need to be, mindful of the investments and getting the outcomes. But I think there's some really good opportunities that we can move forward on relatively quickly, which I think is really important. As I say, we're in an economic crisis. We need jobs. And then there are projects, that looking forward to the future. So I know cities have certainly told me please, can you give us some, some certainty on what you're going to be investing in transit? And that's why, in the long run, permanent public transit funding is so important. These are major projects. Often procurements take a while. When you buy an electric bus, or you build a new LRT, you really do need to look out into the future. So it means investments that we're already doing. It means new investments, in particular, that are opportunities right now. And then it's in the long-term investments in the future. But there are projects there that I know in Ontario, the Ontario government has talked about a number of projects, Hamilton LRT. And as I say, there are projects like that in Vancouver, in Quebec as well.
We'll talk more about those projects. And you mentioned that this funding is permanent. The needs of Toronto's transit system are endless. The TTC says that it needs $23.2 billion worth of work just to keep the system in a state of good repair, not to mention the costs associated with building new lines. And as you mentioned, we are in a pandemic. A lot of people are working from home, so transit ridership is low. What about considering maybe operational funding?
So that's a really good point. We all know that because of the pandemic, many people are working from home. And so there's been a lot less people using public transit, although it's been really important to keep it operating because essential workers, restarting the economy, people need to get to their jobs, kids to school. And so we have supported operating costs. That's unusual. We did that through the Safe Restart Agreement.
Isn't that funding running out, though, in a few months?
Well, we have said that was a start. And I think that, with the pandemic, it is ongoing and we will come to the end of it. But you're right. We have committed to working with the municipalities, with the provinces, to make sure that we support them through the pandemic. And I know this is an ongoing conversation with cities to understand how do we support operating costs. And I think that's a really important piece. I do know some people say, well, why would you invest in permanent public transit for the future? Isn't it going to look different? We will always need good public transit. And certainly when we talk about climate change and the future we want, we need cities and towns across the country to have good, accessible, affordable, clean transit for their citizens. So we need to do both. Help get cities through the pandemic, help them with operating costs so they can keep on running their systems safely, and then also work with them to build for the future.
You mentioned towns, and you've mentioned the Hamilton LRT, and I know that's your hometown. Caroline Mulroney, Ontario's Minister of Transportation, has added Hamilton's LRT project back to its priority list for transit. It joins the Ontario Line subway, Scarborough's subway extension, Eglinton Crosstown West extension, and Yonge North subway extension. All of these projects are in urban areas, and this is not a criticism of the Ontario government. But what do you say to critics who say this funding announcement pays too much attention to urban areas and not enough attention to rural areas?
So I do want to be really clear that we need public transit across the board. And so we've announced that we will also be supporting rural transit. And those aren't big projects. They can be very big projects for those towns, but those have to be tailored to the rural areas. So we will stay tuned. We will be talking and making announcements about rural transit, and we're funding rural transit right now. And it's interesting because it is critically important. Often, there aren't other opportunities to get around. If you don't have a car and you live in a rural area, public transit is critically important. And there's even a new way of thinking about it. So some of the investments that we've been doing have supported new technology. So apps where, a town can use on-demand service. So that's great because it means if, you may not have a huge ridership, but you definitely need to be supporting your residents so they can book when they want the bus to come by. And so that's just smarter, using technology in a smarter way. But I think we do need to not forget rural areas and how critically important for members of those areas to get around. Sometimes it's the only way you can get around. You might have to go further distances. And I think also thinking about intertown transit, it's not just within the town, it can be within a wider area. So that is incredibly important. While you do get a lot of attention on the major projects, that's a top priority of ours as well.
Building transit infrastructure is expensive. And the $3 billion per year, some people might consider that a drop in the bucket. Will this be enough to help projects off the ground?
Well, so I guess I should say as I said, we're building on what's working. So we have $26 billion. It's a plan that goes out till 2027 to invest in public transit. And we've been making investments, but there is more ambition. So these are really, as I say, these are for new projects where we have allocated money to provinces, but they want to do more. And I think that's great. Of course, we need to see details. So with the Ontario government, we've really encouraged them to bring forward the details about these projects because, of course, we need to be mindful of taxpayer dollars. But this is really to increase the ambition that we're already investing in public transit, but we think we can do more. And in terms of the amounts, these are very long-term projects. So you're not spending on an LRT project or a new subway line. You don't spend all the money in the first year, of course. Take a long time. You've got a plan and you start building. Construction takes a number of years. So these are long timelines. And so, the money that we have isn't for one project at once. It's for a number of projects at the same time for a number of years.
Well, the $3 billion is supposed to be kicking in 2026, 27. What if you're not in government then? Why not include that $3 billion now while you're in government?
Well, as I say, we're already investing in public transit. And so we're already moving forward on a whole range of projects. This is money that when we talk to cities, when we try to understand what are the opportunities, as I say, this is about building back better, but also building back smarter. We hear about new projects. And so we have money right now, but we need money going forward to meet this ambition. And in transit, I'll just say this. I know it may sound funny coming from a politician, but one of the worst things that can happen in public transit is every project is just, a political opportunity. Cities, when I talk to them, we need to plan out 5, 10, 20, 30 years. And that's why it's so important that they know there's a commitment by not just our government, but for any government to invest in public transit. I would certainly hope that all future governments would value public transit and that they would be committed to permanent public transit, because also it's about Canadian jobs, the manufacturing of many of, take electric buses. The leading companies are Canadian, Lion Electric and Nova Bus in Quebec. We have New Flyer in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and we have Ballard fuel cell buses in BC. So there's a jobs play. There's also the opportunity to be smart about procurement and not wasting money, as you can have a longer lead time and you can purchase in bulk. So I think it's just about being smarter about transit. And ultimately, when I talk to people, they want better public transit because it improves their quality of life. If you can save an hour, half an hour each direction getting to and from your house, think about how you can spend that time.
Oh yeah, I used to spend
time to hang out with your kids.
I used to spend 3 hours in transit every day. But when your government first came to power in 2015, you did so with a plan to tackle what you called Canada's infrastructure deficit. How far have you come in 5 years?
Well, we have a historic plan in terms of the quantum of investments we're making in infrastructure. And it's across the board. It's my department is making huge investments in infrastructure, and that's everything from public transit to wastewater to renewable energy to rural broadband, incredibly important to folks, to roads and bridges. So we've been making these investments. We're continuing to make these investments. Just this year, when I came in, my top priority was one of my top priorities was to make sure that we could move forward on projects as quickly as possible. So we have already approved 1,300 projects since the pandemic started. And you're seeing the construction across the country and certainly in Ontario. You go to cities and towns across Ontario. These are good jobs, good projects that are making a real difference in people's lives. And we're going to continue doing that because we need to invest in infrastructure. In kind of economic terms, it's the largest driver of growth. We've committed to 1 million jobs. It's obviously a critical component of that, often very good union jobs, but a whole range of jobs. And then it's the other benefits. It's about tackling climate change. When we invest in electric buses or renewable energy or better wastewater, all of these things are incredibly important to the future we want, and of course inclusive communities. One thing I've been extremely focused on is how do we make sure that there's fair distribution of new investments of projects across the country. It can't just be in wealthier areas that you get nice projects, that it needs to be in areas where there are marginalized communities. They deserve good community centers. They deserve good public transit. And often you've seen that they have been left behind. And I think that's really important to me. And so an inclusivity lens is also something we take to it. It can mean rural as well. Sometimes, as you say, there's a lot of focus on urban areas. But getting triple benefits from every dollar, getting projects built at a time where we need good jobs and we need growth is totally my focus right now.
Well, that's a good segue to my next question, because another promise that your government made was to provide infrastructure to remote Indigenous communities. The Canadian Council for Public-Private Partnerships estimates the government still needs to invest another $30 billion to close the infrastructure gap in First Nations communities. What do you say to those communities, many in Northern Ontario, who do not have access to clean water, sewage treatment, or adequate power?
Look, that we are committed to making those investments. We have my colleague, Mark Miller, who's extraordinarily focused on how do we tackle, for example, clean drinking water, and we've made a lot of progress. Is there still more work to do? Absolutely. In my portfolio, I have told my department that we will have, on a distinctions basis, a percentage of money set aside for every different program we have for Indigenous peoples. That's First Nations, Métis, Inuit peoples, so that through my program, we are very focused on making sure that we're supporting good infrastructure. We have a Canada Infrastructure Bank. I just released a letter that sets out the priorities for the bank. So it tells the bank that in addition to priorities like public transit, like clean power, $1 billion needs to be invested in partnership with Indigenous peoples. There are huge opportunities to partner. And Indigenous peoples are very savvy, and they also deserve better infrastructure. A great project that that the Canada Infrastructure Bank just announced was a partnership with a company called Enerstor and a First Nations community to create the largest battery storage facility, I think, in North America. Just a great example of a project that can be transformational, and it's also going to provide dividends to the Indigenous community in terms of economic benefits and jobs and good infrastructure.
Well, the opposition is saying that there is no money to spend on these projects. Is this the time to be spending on infrastructure when some would say that we have bigger problems to deal with?
Well, if people want growth, so I'm assuming that the opposition thinks that they want growth and jobs, that's what infrastructure is. When you build things, you create growth, you create jobs, and you also move to the cleaner future. That's our focus. And you build more inclusive communities. So I would hope that everyone would agree that making investments in infrastructure is important, but more than ever, we are in an economic crisis, the greatest economic crisis since the Great Recession, the Great Depression, and we need to build our way out of it quite literally. And we need to be smart, though. And I'm someone who really believes that with taxpayer dollars, you don't build gazebos, you go and build things that are going to have multiple benefits. They're going to create jobs, they're going to create growth, they're going to help tackle climate change, and they're going to build more inclusive communities and support everyone's opportunity to succeed. And that's what infrastructure is. Infrastructure is kind of a kind of made up bureaucratic word, but it's about building things that matter. And I think this is the time more than ever. You don't have to take it from me. The International Monetary Fund has said this. If you look at the Biden administration, their ambition on investments in infrastructure for the same reasons. For jobs and growth, for climate action, and for inclusive communities.
If it's about growth and building the economy, I think something that's top of mind for everybody is vaccines and dealing with this health crisis. So why not spend on building our own capacity to maybe manufacture vaccines?
So we are doing that, and I really need to give a shout out to my colleague Anita Anand. She is, our Minister of Procurement, and she has been working across the board to procure the vaccines. As well as all the essential supplies we need. But we also are working on developing our capacity. That takes time. And I think it just goes to the point of how important infrastructure investments are and how important it is to really figure out what you need for the future, because you can't just build things in a day. You need planning. And that is something that we're working very hard on so that we have the ability to produce our own vaccines. Of course, right now, the biggest thing on everyone's mind is making sure that we can get vaccines into the arms of Canadians right now, and that's what we're doing. But of course, looking to the future, and I think more broadly, the pandemic has raised. I think it's shown where we need to do more work as a country.
Where is
and
that?
I think that is affordable housing. We need more and better housing. Our government is committed to investing in housing. We've made major investments. We're also investing in modular housing and allowing cities and towns to buy hotels and to deal with the immediate housing crisis. But that is the weakness. We know childcare. We've lost a lot of childcare spots. We need better and more childcare. That's an economic issue as much as anything else. It's an equity issue, but it's also an economic issue. Women being able to work. We don't want them dropping out of the workforce. I think long-term care, another area where we really need to be thinking hard about how are we supporting our, seniors who've contributed so much to society. And so I think these are lessons. I'm embarking on a national infrastructure assessment. And that you might say, well, why haven't we done that before? I mean, we've had a 10-year plan of investments in infrastructure, but now we need to look out to the future. We need to look out to like 2050. We've said we're going to be net zero by 2050. We need to tackle climate change. Equity and inclusivity is important. So we need to think really hard about what infrastructure do we need and how are we going to get there? And, how is every level of government going to contribute? But also the private sector has a role to play. Our pension funds have a role to play. And so I'm really excited. I'm coming from a different portfolio before as Minister of Environment and Climate Change. But I think I take the same passion that I have to actually get real things done in people's lives. And of course, to really think hard about a cleaner future. We need to tackle climate change. We're going to get out of the economic crisis, the health crisis, but then we still have the climate crisis. And that is something, if we use the same ingenuity, if we listen to science and scientists, if we innovate, if we work with the private sector, I know we can tackle climate change too. And certainly infrastructure has a really important role to play.
Well, Mr. McKenna, that's all the time we have for now. Thank you so much for your insights. We really do appreciate you making time for us this evening. Thank you.
It's great. Well, thanks very much. I appreciate being on your show.
Healthcare delivery at any time is an essential service, and during a pandemic, the cracks and gaps that normally exist are only more visible and potentially devastating. Nick Dunne is our Ontario Hub journalist covering the Northeast, and he joins us from Sudbury. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jan.
So before we get started, let's watch this short video to set the table.
What is a remote nursing station? On-reserve nursing stations are set up as primary healthcare for remote First Nations in Canadian provinces. The federal government is responsible for funding and administering healthcare to these remote communities. Nursing stations help provide such services where hospitals and other medical facilities don't exist. Teams vary in number depending on the size of the community they're serving. Nurses require additional training to work in remote regions with fewer resources and where conditions may be different from what they've encountered in other parts of the province. If a patient needs more care, they are flown to the closest hospital. During crisis situations such as a pandemic, nursing station teams are even more important. However, critics have raised questions about the quality of training and level of staffing at nursing stations. In 2021, Indigenous Services Canada runs 21 nursing stations on remote First Nations in Ontario.
So Nick, now that we know what nursing stations are, can you tell us why they're so important and why they're needed?
Yeah, well, as the explainer mentions, Jan, they are the primary point of contact for healthcare in these communities, where many small communities in Ontario or Southern Ontario and even parts of Northern Ontario, might be within an hour's drive, a 2-hour drive to a hospital. These are remote communities that are a several hundred kilometer flight away, right? So it's not like, you have access that is easy to get to. So there needs to be some level of healthcare to deal with the acute and chronic needs in any given community.
So let's talk about the training. The training that these nurses receive, is it special training? Is it any different from what a normal nurse would go through?
Well, these nurses have to be a jack of all trades. You're a handful of nurses in a community of several hundred people to upwards of 1,000. So you're dealing with everything from diabetes to mental health calls to doing blood work, public health nursing. It's kind of everything, right? So you have to be ready and equipped to do everything. On top of that, there's a lot of cultural training. Being able to form relationships with these communities, get that familiarity, work with your patients. It's a very unique context, and there's a whole lot of added responsibilities to it when you're working in such a small health team in a remote community.
Well, let's talk about one community. In your TVO.org article, you wrote about Sagigo Lake First Nation. Tell us what we need to know about that community when it comes to administering healthcare.
Yeah, so I spoke with Dr. Ben Langer, a physician who works out of the Sioux Lookout area and visits about once for a week each month, approximately, give or take. And he was talking about how often there's only 2 nurses in his community at a given time. There's supposed to be 3 nurses, but he feels that even when they're fully staffed, they're having a lot of trouble.
Now, this is just a normal day. Let's just add a pandemic to this. How does that impact delivering healthcare to a community like that?
Yeah, so there's a number of things. First of all, the mental health needs are already quite acute in a lot of northern communities. And the pandemic, like it's affecting, I think, everyone who's dealing with isolation, dealing with added mental health pressures, anxiety about the state of this pandemic. It is increasing those mental health calls. That's what Dr. Ben Langer, Dr. Claudette Chase, Dr. Marilyn Koval, and a whole score of other doctors from the Sioux Lookout area are saying. And on top of that, the needs, people are afraid to go seek healthcare. They really don't want to have to go fly south where there's COVID potentially to get the help they need, or they just want to avoid gathering, right? So what happens is people are more reluctant to seek healthcare, which means that by the time the doctors see them, they could be in a more deteriorated state and they could be more sick. So, you're seeing people get more and more sick. And then thirdly, this whole rollout of vaccinations, it's been, a terrific effort by Orange, the federal government, First Nations, and the province to vaccinate tens of thousands of people in this compressed period of time. But, you're focusing so hard on COVID that, chronic illnesses and kind of lingering issues kind of persist. Claudette Chase was telling me, you're not keeping up with your pap smears. You're not catching up with your child vaccinations, et cetera, et cetera. You're just dealing with COVID and that acute kind of level of healthcare. Staffing is hard, that there are high levels of burnout. It's hard to maintain people. They're also saying that infrastructure is key, that even if they had people coming in, that there's no room to house them. So they sent a letter to Mark Miller earlier this month, just kind of reaching out for resources because, this is the kind of like first level of defense for these communities when it comes to getting their healthcare issues dealt with. The federal government has since responded. They've been conducting meetings with this group of doctors, but ISC has told me, or Indigenous Services Canada told me, that they acknowledge that staffing is an issue. They've talked about numerous programs for retention, additional funding for staffing. And they mention a figure of $785 million spent in Ontario to date for all healthcare needs regarding the pandemic. That goes everything from PPE to the vaccines to, Indigenous organizations around the province. It's a very, it kind of includes all the funding that has been provided at kind of all levels for not just First Nations, but Indigenous organizations and families as well, Indigenous families.
Now, very quickly, Nick, I do want to ask you, this is something that, isn't new in terms of, the staff shortages in these communities. How else can healthcare outcomes be improved in these regions after talking to the doctors?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, nursing stations, that's really at the community level, and that's where the acute needs are being met. But, and everyone I've spoken to about this, from Claudette Chase, from Ben Langer, from other doctors, and even Janet Gordon, the chief operating officer at the Sioux Lookout First Nations Health Authority, she was really talking about the need to address those fundamental social determinants of health. The reason why the needs are so acute is because, there are issues of infrastructure, of housing, of access to things like water and electricity. And if you can, work to prevent, things from getting to the point of needing acute care, you're going to be reducing in the long-term stress on places like nursing stations and other facilities.
I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight on the show. That's Nick Dunne, our Northeastern Ontario Hub journalist.
Thanks for having me.
The agenda this week learned how the history of Black settlers in one Ontario town was almost wiped out, considered Canada's approach to vaccine diplomacy, assessed why Western nations don't try to export democracy like they once did, and examined Uganda's efforts in the past 50 years at democratic government. The agenda's Week in Review begins with some gentle advice for troubled times from psychotherapist and author Julia Samuel.
Why is change so difficult for so many of us?
I mean, everybody that's come through my door, they know that life is change and they kind of welcome the change, but they don't want to do the change themselves that goes with it. Do you know what I mean? So the first arrow is the bad news. So you've broken up with your partner, or you've lost your job, or you've got a health diagnosis, or you recognize you're in a pandemic. But we are born adaptive, but we fear the not knowing of the new versions of ourselves. So we kind of hold on to, like grim death, the older versions, because we prefer the familiar to the scary unknown. I mean, I think one of the biggest things people are finding hard now is not having control and not knowing what on earth is going to happen next, or not being able to make plans.
Well, you've no doubt had a huge litany, a very long list of different ailments come through your doors over the years. I know you've mentioned a few of them here, but if you had to rank them, what are the most serious changes that people are the most afraid of having to undergo?
I think there are two, I think, in particular. I think the three big ones are your relationship, losing your job, and a health diagnosis. Obviously, your life being threatened is radically the most frightening, because it may mean the end of your life. And all of us live, like, every day we wake up assuming that tomorrow is going to be the same as today. And a diagnosis that you have a life-threatening illness, grief starts at the point of diagnosis, because you kind of plan your death. I think you immediately sort of imagine you're going to die. So that is very scary, I think.
Does that kind of trepidation happen even when the news is good and not just bad?
You've read my book. I'm very impressed. Yes, because, when you commit to a relationship, you've had this dream ever since you were 8 years old that you're going to commit to somebody and you're going to have this happy future. And then when you actually do it, you realize that in order to live with them and commit to them, you have to give up a whole lot of stuff. You have to give up having, depends on your relationship, but most people have to give up having sex with other people, or you have to do their laundry, or deal with their bad mood. So nothing comes for nothing. And the first arrow is the change, and the second arrow is what we do about the change and how we kind of shift ourselves, to reshape ourselves. And those that change, that are most adaptable, are the happiest in life. Those that resist change, that get hit by change again when it happens, and it does happen every 7 or 8 years, are the least happy, are the least content.
And do you know why some people are better at it than others?
I think it's partly their upbringing. It might be partly their DNA. I think it's a lot to do with what's been modeled to you about previous losses. You know, like now, what I call the change now is a living loss. So all the things that we predicted that we can have, like seeing our friends, making plans, having holidays, they've been taken off the table. And the experience of that is a loss. It's a living loss, and it's experienced like grief. And if you've observed your parents managing those losses and what they do with them, we learn from our parents. And so if you've seen parents that are pretty adaptable and robust, then you tend to be as well.
Why do you think that we know so little about Colonel Price, the United Empire loyalist, after whom Priceville was named?
Because he was a Black United Empire loyalist. And largely, by 1811, the names of Black United Empire loyalists were largely stricken from the rolls. We have to put ourselves into the mindset of the time. This was still when slavery was legal on the entire North American continent. Colonel Price and many people like him who came to Ontario had made the decision to fight for Great Britain, which made them loyalists. And the land grants that they got were in areas that the white loyalists didn't necessarily want, because it was too hard to clean or drain or cut down the forest. We were more than willing to take that. We had worked under similar conditions under enslavement, and that didn't bother us. But again, I'm saying we weren't given socialized information on how to own something. Just taking it over and clearing it up and promising to meet guidelines and stipulations like clearing 5 acres within 3 years or paying off the price of the property within 10 years. Little tricks were played, and the property was taken away.
Elisa, I wonder if I could follow up with this. Again, I want you to take us back. The Black community had established itself in Priceville, and then white settlers came into the area. And I wonder if you could just give us some more information about that first contact, how it all went.
Well, there would be several ways in which it would go. The Black families most probably invited the white families into their homes until they could get their own properties cleared and built. The white settlers may have been a little bit jealous of what they were seeing. You know, after all, European immigrants were coming from hard times as well. The Irish came here with the first potato famine. They were under colonization from the British. They had very little themselves. And to see others who were racially not appreciated. I'm trying to be very diplomatic about the way I say this.
I noticed that. That was a very gentle way of putting it.
Yeah. And then there could have been, as Jennifer said, mixed marriages. And so over the course of even 2 generations, we can blend out. And people wouldn't know that we were Black unless they were told. And so in order to not be ashamed of themselves or to take on the guise of a white person, they would shun their Black family.
Jennifer, was it also the case that if you were a white family and you worked the land for the year, it was yours? If you're a Black family, not the case. Is that true?
Absolutely. In actual fact, some of the settlers, the white settlers, targeted land that had already been cleared, that there weren't any deeds, and within a year, because they had land that had actually been prepared for them, essentially, they were able to move in and establish, the community, and as you know, with Priceville, after whites took over the community, the only remnants was the cemetery. And what actually happened was a farmer, Billy Reed, plucked all the gravestones and essentially pitched some of them into a stone pile, floored his stable and his basement with the gravestones. And of course, one gentleman, Stuart Muir, who was an older gentleman in the film, he talked about them using a gravestone as home plate. So there was no respect for the Black lives that was there before, the Black's life that had done all of this work. There was no value placed on them.
Which countries or regions of the world do you think we are particularly trying to influence with our vaccine diplomacy?
Well, I think quite simply, you have to look at where our foreign aid has gone before. It really is a great predictor of where we want to influence. Now, I do have to point out that most of our kind of contribution is through this COVAX mechanism, as my colleague noted, because I think this is where we think we're going to do most good. So we've really done our job in sort of putting it through the international organizations like the WHO and the COVAX mechanism, which is really the right way to do it. But, I think you just have to follow where the money is, where we sort of contributing our foreign aid dollars. It's in, many developing countries. Of course, Latin America is an important market for us, economically. So we're going to, donate there, and certainly parts of East Asia and Africa as well.
Erica, you mentioned the word equity earlier, and I want to follow up on that. Do you believe that Canada either can or should use vaccine diplomacy to, for example, promote gender equity in some countries that don't follow it as closely as perhaps we'd like them to?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And as I think many people know, the Prime Minister actually made this a key part of his political platform back in 2015 as part of the feminist agenda. But I would argue that gender is much broader than just vaccine diplomacy. But the implications for vaccines to women are really particular. For example, women here at home and globally are more vulnerable in health terms during periods of crisis. And this is particularly true during COVID-19. One of the reasons is that women make up more than 70% of the health workforce and therefore are at greater risk. The second reason is the kind of roles that women play. They often are essential workers, they are PSWs. And as we heard back in March last year, if we can dial the clock back that far, female-dominated service sector jobs were among the first to be affected in the first wave of the pandemic, because many of these jobs were precarious because they're part-time, they lack benefits such as paid sick leave, which is a hotly debated issue right now in Ontario, and job security. So of course, access to vaccines for women is a particularly important issue here at home, but also globally.
Besma, can I hear you on that too?
Yeah, of course, I completely agree. And I think the other aspect of this is that, of course, women's organizations are really grassroots organizations. And what they can do is obviously raise public awareness. I think we have to point out there's still a lot of vaccine skepticism. I mean, it's not just a developing country problem. And I just heard a poll, a YouGov poll that noted that, in France, 48% of people are still very skeptical about even taking the vaccine. So we do need to raise public awareness, public education, and women's organizations, being grassroots organizations, knowing their communities, knowing their families, are really important. They help in countering disinformation. So the more we can get these types of grassroots organizations through a bottom-up effort, the better we'll be in terms of getting that kind of vaccine distribution that's needed to really stamp out this virus.
Erica, can I pursue this just one more time? And that is, I want to make sure I got a better understanding of this. I don't think there's anybody in Canada who would say, for example, men ought to get a shot before women, and who cares about equity? Men are more important to society, and therefore ... No one would take that view in Canada. But there may be places in this world where that is the view. And do you think the government of Canada ought to use vaccine diplomacy to try to stamp that out?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be really careful that we don't preach to the developing world what may be also issues here at home. And as my colleague expressed, while we wouldn't necessarily suggest that, we've also already seen attempts by men to jump the queue and get vaccines in northern part of Canada, as one example. And so I think that the issue is here at home as well. I guess the other issue has to do with trust in institutions, as my colleague alluded to. And so I think it's really important to build capacity for adoption of vaccines, because we can't rest on our laurels. Vaccine hesitancy is here, and part of the reason is trust in institutions who tend to deliver them.
Well, Besma, admittedly, I'm doing a little bit of spitballing here, so help me out if I'm really off base here. But for example, could Canada use vaccine diplomacy if it wanted to mediate in a long-standing dispute, for example, in the Middle East? I'm not sure how, but do you see a role for it in that circumstance?
Well, you have to be really careful with that, frankly. I mean, you don't want to weaponize the vaccine, so to speak. You don't want to make it a overly political tool, even though I think, frankly, it is in many ways. I mean, I don't think really, and I don't see a Canadian example really effectively to be used in the Middle East, for example. But, think about countries like Nepal or Sri Lanka, where you have China and India very much competing for influence in those two countries. They're doing exactly that. And frankly, the leaders of both Sri Lanka and Nepal are smart enough to actually use China and India against each other to get more and more vaccines.
There are places in this world which have fewer objections to the notion of free and fair elections, that part of the democratic equation. But they're not going to give up the notion of religion having an absolutely central part of the story of their country and in the daily life of their country. They are not signing on for gay rights and that kind of thing. These are the parts of the equation they're not going to be a part of, and yet they still want to be thought of as democracies. Discuss.
Well, absolutely. I spent 11 years abroad, and most of that time was actually covering not so much conflict, but faith and religion and faith and politics. If you want a refresher course on the importance of that and how connected they are, think of our friends to the South. For better or for worse, faith and religion are huge parts of American politics, certainly the anti-abortion drive with the Republican Party. But remember, if you think about the setbacks, let's say in Poland right now, a lot of people are focusing on the loss of abortion rights. I couldn't be more pro-choice, but I understand that that's not necessarily an indicator of pure democracy, because look at Ireland. We think of Ireland as a robust democracy, but they banned abortion for decades. Italy took its time. So you can't pick and choose. Democracy is a process, and it doesn't have one particular look. There are many democracies in Africa and the Caribbean, some of which are quite healthy, which are very retrograde on gay rights. So you can't necessarily pick and cherry pick which are the problem areas. You mentioned the Middle East a moment ago. I spent 4 years living in the Middle East, and I've just been to Iran and Egypt, Lebanon in the last 3 or 4 years. These are countries that are hurting in every way, but certainly democratically. Egypt, Lebanon has a kind of democracy, a phantom democracy, but it is hijacked by various factions, religion playing a huge part there. But here's the point I want to make. People in Palestine, in Gaza, in the West Bank, who have not had an election since 2005, 15 years ago, despite purporting to be democratic, they are inspired by a model, not necessarily the optimal model, but perhaps inspiration is a wrong word that will offend some people, but they see democracy in action every day next door on their television screens in Israel. Israel is an occupying force about whom they are deeply, to whom they feel great antipathy and everything else. But one of the reasons they want democracy is that they have been exposed to it every day in Israel, where they have 2 or 3 elections a year in a bad year. So people want democracy. Chinese on the mainland see what's happening in Taiwan, and they want democracy. One of the reasons they're snuffing out democracy in Hong Kong is the fear that it will be a virus that is a contagion in the mainland. So there is still that desire to look for models. The models can be flawed as it is in America. People can still aspire for the process of democracy with all the good, the bad, and the ugly.
You mentioned America, and I want to pick up there with Lucan. There's a new team in the Oval Office now, Lucan, and well, they're different from the old team. The old team didn't seem to have too much of a problem with increasing authoritarianism in various parts of the world. I wonder whether you think Joe Biden and Kamala Harris intend to be more robust in their pursuit of a more liberal international order.
Well, it wouldn't be hard, given the fact that you had a president who actively embraced autocrats and favored them over democratic leaders. And I think there will definitely, especially in terms of rhetoric, be a shift in terms of actively trying to promote democracy in various countries. But there are clear limits. I mean, there's just obviously a lot of stuff on Biden's plate, global warming, obviously COVID, that require him to work with autocrats. So I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be too optimistic in terms of how far he's willing to go. But I do think this change in rhetoric, can have a huge impact on the margins.
Besma, how about you on that same question?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, certainly we've seen a total change in rhetoric coming out of the White House. And I think Biden's going to be a more introverted president. I don't think you're going to get a lot, despite the rhetoric that we've seen already and some very good kind of signs to rejoin the multilateral framework. I don't think you're going to get a very active president. And frankly, I think, this is not a time to be talking about sort of fixing the world when they need to fix what's happening at home. The United States is broken. It's polarized. You have racial challenges all day, the inequity, economic disparities, talking about trying to find a new path forward for economic growth. I mean, there are so many challenges at home for Biden to fix. I just don't think they have the moral high ground to sort of be talking about trying to fix the world.
The Museveni government is set up differently than the Amin government is set up. The Amin government was a military dictatorship. Politics happened by decree. Everything was done from Kampala and handed down to the provinces in a very one-way manner. President Museveni's regime works differently. I take the point that, the increasing violence in public life reminds people of aspects of the 1970s. But nonetheless, President Museveni's regime is more answerable to the public will, considerably more answerable to the public will than Amin's had been. For Amin, the military itself held the answers, and it was up to government to implement the president's directives and for administrators in the provinces to follow the line that Amin gave. That's the way that politics worked in the 70s.
If you compare Museveni and Idi Amin, I would say the biggest difference is that whereas Idi Amin was a complete authoritarian or maybe dictator, Museveni is a dictator dressed in democratic clothes, right? So he has created institutions of the state, which Idi Amin did not have. But he has worked tirelessly to undermine these same institutions to ensure that no institutions gets power to become independent and hold him accountable. So this is the biggest difference between Amin's regime and Museveni's regime. The other difference is that whereas Idi Amin did many of the human rights violations in secret, many of the people that were killed or murdered under Idi Amin, we never came to know about them until later. The military in Uganda right now is willing to engage in this torture, in abduction, in kidnapping of Ugandans, and in most cases doing them during the day, and sometimes being recorded by even civilians. Many of these video clips of torture or abductions have been spreading all over internet. Part of it is because they are being recorded by individual civilians. Now, we should also admit that, yes, Museveni has created this image of himself as the father of the nation, of Uganda as a nation. Part of it is because he is such a big dominating figure in Ugandan politics, having captured power as a rebel leader and having spent 35 years in power, creating a huge patronage network that is able to preside over to rule the country.
Just to go back to what you said, Rita, you said that Canada is a small player, and I think the number is 50 million compared to the US's $1 billion. Does Canada need to take more responsibility towards where and how this aid is dispersed, even if, as you said, it's small?
I think there's a lot for Canada to think about in this. I think there's a lot for it to reconsider in terms of how it positions itself vis-a-vis the broader donor agenda of supporting democracy and human rights and supporting security and stability. Now, Canada has always said that its main purpose is to support democracy and human rights. If you go to their website on Canada-Uganda relations, they say we're supporting democracy and human rights and stability and security. Well, this election shows that it's hard to do the two at the same time. And this means that Canada will have to think carefully about other ways in which it can support democracy, not from a position of superiority, not from a position of saying what a country must do, but from a position of solidarity, from a position of supporting. And I think in that sense, Canada being a small country, a middle power, it doesn't have that much influence in the world. But we are at the point in the world where democracy is in decline pretty much everywhere. And most countries have withdrawn from active democracy promotion. For a country like Canada, this is potentially an opportunity to seek ways of building alliances with other middle powers to find ways of, again, supporting democratic forces at home and abroad.
That's just some of what we covered this week on The Agenda. For more, including the full conversations, you can visit our website, tvo.org, our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, or our Twitter feed, twitter.com/theagenda. And that's it for this Friday, February 19th, 2021. Next week, we're looking at Canada's equalization system, why psychedelic drugs could be having a moment, and hear from Canada's top public health doctor, Teresa Tam. I'm Nam Kiwanuka. Thanks for watching TVO and for joining us online at tvo.org. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again on Monday.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. Ontario Hubs are made possible by the Barry and Laurie Green Family Charitable Trust and Goldie Feldman. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
I'm Bethany Hughes, and I want to take you on the ultimate adventure across the Greek islands.
Follow in the footsteps of Odysseus,
The legendary warrior whose cunning won the Trojan War.
This is an unbelievable trip. You will meet different cultures and different people, but we are all original Greeks.
And their world became a